In the quiet town of Oakfield, 8-year-old Emma lived with her mum in a small flat above the local bakery. The sweet smell of fresh bread filled their home each morning, making it feel warm even when the heating wasn't working well. Since Dad had died last year, things had been hard. Mum worked long hours at the bakery downstairs, often looking tired but always finding a smile for Emma. Their flat was tiny, just 2 rooms with faded wallpaper and old furniture. But Mum had hung Dad's photos everywhere, so it felt like he was still watching over them. Emma missed him terribly, especially when she saw other children with their fathers at the school gates. That autumn morning was especially cold. Frost covered the ground like sugar icing on a cake. Emma wrapped her red scarf tightly around her neck. It was Dad's last birthday gift to her. Mum had made her usual packed lunch, a cheese sandwich, an apple, and a small chocolate biscuit. For a treat. "Be good at school today, love," Mum said, kissing Emma's forehead. "And remember to walk straight there, no talking to strangers." Emma nodded and stepped out into the chilly morning. The town was waking up slowly. Shop owners were raising their shutters, and a few cars drove carefully on the icy roads. Emma loved walking through the park on her way to school. The trees were losing their leaves, creating a golden carpet on the ground. Today, something was different. A man sat alone on the wooden bench near the duck pond. Emma had never seen him there before. He was very tall, even sitting down, but looked thin in his worn brown coat. His shoulders were hunched forward as if carrying a heavy weight. What caught Emma's attention most were his eyes, deep brown and filled with such sadness that Emma felt a little pain in her chest, just looking at him. Other adults walked by quickly, some even crossing to the other path to avoid him. Emma watched as an old lady clutched her handbag tighter when passing the bench. But Emma didn't feel scared. Instead, she felt curious and a bit sad for this lonely man. Her mum's warning about strangers echoed in her mind, but another voice, perhaps her dad's, reminded her of something he used to say, "Kindness costs nothing, Emma Bear, but it can mean everything." Emma looked at her paper lunch bag. She wasn't even that hungry today. Before she could change her mind, her feet were already carrying her toward the bench. "Hello, sir," Emma said softly, her voice almost getting lost in the morning breeze. The man looked up, startled that someone was speaking to him. Up close, Emma could see his face was thin, with stubble that hadn't been shaved for days. "Would you like my sandwich? Mum made it fresh this morning." For a moment, the man just stared at her as if trying to understand why this small girl was talking to him. Then his eyes softened, and the smallest smile appeared on his face, like sunshine breaking through clouds. "That's very kind of you," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I'm Jack." He hesitated before adding, "But folks used to call me Big Shaq when I played basketball." Emma had no idea what Big Shaq meant. Basketball wasn't popular in her school. They mostly played football. But she smiled anyway and held out her lunch bag. "I'm Emma. I'm 8, she said simply. Jack carefully took the paper bag, his large hands shaking slightly. When he opened it and saw the simple cheese sandwich wrapped in paper, something changed in his face. His eyes became watery, and he quickly wiped them with his sleeve. "Thank you, Emma," he said, his voice cracking a little. It's been a while since anyone's been kind to me." Emma didn't fully understand what he meant, but she felt happy seeing him unwrap the sandwich and take a small bite. He ate slowly, as if savoring every mouthful. Emma noticed his fingernails were dirty and his hands rough, but he handled her mum's sandwich with care, like it was something precious. "Is it good?" Emma asked, rocking back and forth on her heels. Jack nodded. "Best sandwich I've had in years," he said, and this time his smile reached his eyes, making them crinkle at the corners. The school bell rang in the distance. Emma knew she needed to hurry. "I have to go to school now," she said, "but maybe I'll see you tomorrow." Jack looked surprised at this suggestion, as if the idea that someone would want to see him again was strange. He gave a small nod. "Maybe," he said quietly, though he didn't sound convinced. Emma waved goodbye and ran toward school, her heart feeling light. She didn't know who Jack really was or why he seemed so sad, but she was glad she'd given him her sandwich. Dad would have been proud of her today. Jack Big Shaq Thompson walked slowly back to his small room at the edge of town. The cheese sandwich from Emma was long gone, but the feeling it gave him stayed. 10 years ago, Jack had been Oakfield's biggest star. His face was on posters all over town. Children wanted his autograph. Adults wanted to shake his hand. Everyone knew Big Shaq. Jack's room was tiny and cold. The paint peeled from the walls. A single bed with thin blankets sat in one corner. A small table with one chair stood by the window. On the table was an old photo of Jack in his basketball uniform, smiling with a golden trophy. That man in the photo seemed like a stranger now. Jack remembered the days when he couldn't walk down Main Street without people stopping him. "Big Shaq, great game last night," they would say, or "Can I get a picture with you?" Jack had loved it all. The cheering crowds, the newspaper stories about his amazing throws, the feeling of being someone special. Then came that terrible game in London. Jack jumped high to score a point, but when he landed, his knee twisted badly. The crack was so loud that people in the front rows heard it. Jack fell to the floor screaming in pain. The doctors later told him he would never play basketball properly again. Everything changed after that. The team dropped him. The fans forgot him. His fancy house had to be sold. His wife Mary said she couldn't handle his dark moods anymore and left. Jack started drinking too much. He spent all his money. Soon he was just another homeless man that people crossed the street to avoid. Jack sat on his bed and pulled off his worn boots. The sandwich Emma had given him was simple, just cheese and cucumber between 2 slices of bread. But it was the best thing he had eaten in weeks. Not because he was hungry, though he often was, but because it came with something he hadn't felt in years. Kindness without wanting anything back. Most people who recognized Jack now either looked away embarrassed or made jokes about how far he had fallen. "Remember Big Shaq? Look at him now," they would whisper as he passed. Each word was like a knife in his heart. But Emma had no idea who he used to be. She just saw someone who needed help. Her small hands holding out that sandwich, her simple smile. It made Jack feel human again, not just a failed basketball star. Jack got up and walked to the cracked mirror on the wall. His face was thin. His once short, neat hair was now long and messy. His eyes looked tired and old. He was only 35 but looked much older. "Who are you now?" he asked his reflection. "If you're not Big Shaq anymore, who are you?" For years, Jack had been running from this question. Basketball had been his whole life since he was 12. Without it, he felt empty, useless. But today, because of Emma's kindness, something small had changed inside him. A tiny spark of hope that perhaps he could be someone again, not Big Shaq the basketball star, but just Jack, a man who might still have something to give. He hadn't planned to go back to that park bench tomorrow. What was the point? But when Emma asked if she would see him there, Jack found himself nodding. Now he felt he had to keep that promise to the little girl who had shown him kindness when no one else would. Jack looked around his sad little room. On the floor was an old sports bag. He reached down and opened it. Inside was his training whistle from when he had coached young players during summer camps. He picked it up, the metal cold against his palm. He blew it gently and the sharp sound filled the quiet room. "Maybe," Jack whispered to himself. "Just maybe. There's still something left of me worth saving." That night, Jack slept better than he had in months. He dreamed not of packed stadiums and bright lights, but of a small park bench and a little girl with a kind smile offering him a sandwich. In his dream, he wasn't Big Shaq anymore. He was just Jack. And somehow, that felt enough. The next morning, Emma woke up early. She hurried downstairs to the bakery kitchen where Mum was already working, the air warm with the smell of fresh bread. "Mum, can I have 2 sandwiches today?" Emma asked, watching her mother knead dough with flour-covered hands. Mum looked up, surprised. "2? Are you that hungry now?" Emma bit her lip. She didn't want to lie, but she wasn't sure if Mum would approve of her giving food to a stranger. "It's just, I get really hungry at morning break." Mum smiled and wiped her hands on her apron. "Growing girl like you needs proper food." She made 2 cheese and ham sandwiches, wrapped them carefully in paper, and tucked them into Emma's lunch. Emma hugged her mother tight, breathing in the comforting smell of flour and vanilla that always clung to her clothes. "Love you, Mum." "Love you too, sweetheart. Now off to school with you." The morning was bright but cold. Emma's breath made little clouds in the air as she walked quickly to the park. She worried Jack might not be there. Maybe he'd forgotten their meeting, or maybe he never meant to come back at all. But as she rounded the corner, Emma's heart lifted. There he was, sitting on the same bench, looking a bit nervous. He'd tried to tidy himself up. His hair was combed, and his face looked cleaner. He still wore the same old coat, but it was buttoned properly now. "You came back," Emma said happily, skipping the last few steps to the bench. Jack nodded, a small smile on his face. "I did promise, didn't I?" Emma sat beside him and opened her lunch bag. "I brought 2 sandwiches today, one for you and one for me. We can have breakfast together." Jack looked touched by this simple gesture. He took the offered sandwich carefully. "Thank you, Emma, that's very thoughtful." They sat eating together in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Emma swung her legs back and forth, her feet not quite touching the ground. Jack took small, careful bites, as if making the sandwich last as long as possible. "Do you like school?" Jack finally asked. Emma nodded, her mouth full of sandwich. After swallowing, she began telling Jack about her teacher, Mrs. Wilson, her best friend Lily, and how she was learning to multiply numbers. Jack listened with real interest, asking questions that made Emma feel important. "What's your favorite subject?" he asked. "I like art," Emma said, "and PE sometimes, but not when we play basketball. Nobody knows how to teach us properly. Mr. Peters tried, but he hurt his back. Now Mrs. Wilson just lets us throw the ball around. She says the school can't afford a proper coach." Something changed in Jack's face. He sat up straighter, and for a moment Emma saw a different man, someone strong and sure of himself. "Maybe I could help," he said quietly, then looked surprised, as if the words had slipped out without him meaning them to. "Really?" Emma's eyes grew wide. "You know basketball?" Jack nodded slowly. I used to be quite good." The school. Bell rang in the distance. "I have to go," Emma said, jumping up. "But you should come to our school. It's called Oakfield Primary, the big brick building on Green Street." After Emma left, Jack sat for a long time on the bench. His mind was racing with thoughts he hadn't had in years. Could he really help? Would anyone even want his help, knowing what he'd become? Finally, he stood up and began walking toward the community center at the other end of town. 10 years ago, he'd volunteered there during summer breaks, teaching basketball to local kids. It felt like another lifetime. The center looked smaller than he remembered. The blue paint was peeling, and one of the windows was boarded up. Jack hesitated at the door, almost turning back, but then pushed it open. Inside, the familiar smell of sports gear and floor polish brought back memories. The reception desk was manned by a middle-aged man with ginger hair going grey at the temples. He was looking down at some papers. "How can I help you?" the man asked without looking up. "I'm looking for Tom Parker. Is he still the manager here?" The man looked up and his mouth fell open in shock. Jack Thompson? Is that really you?" It was Tom himself, older now, with more wrinkles around his eyes and less hair on his head. "Jack Thompson, where have you been, mate?" Tom came around the desk and gripped Jack's hand, shaking it warmly. "Everyone's been wondering what happened to you." Jack felt shame wash over him. How could he explain that he'd been living as a near-homeless man just streets away all this time? But looking into Tom's kind eyes, Jack found himself telling the truth. About his depression after the injury, losing his wife, the drinking, the money problems. And finally, about a little girl named Emma who had shared her sandwich and somehow given him hope again. Tom listened without judgment. When Jack finished, Tom put a hand on his shoulder. "It's good to have you back, Jack. Really good." "I want to help," Jack said. "The little girl, Emma, her school needs a basketball. Coach, I thought maybe I could, if they'd have me." "That they'd be mad not to," Tom said firmly. He picked up the phone. "Let me call Malcolm. He's the headmaster at Oakfield Primary now. Old friend of mine." That afternoon, Jack stood nervously at the gate of Oakfield Primary School. He'd gone back to his room and had a proper wash, found his cleanest shirt, polished his old trainers as best he could. The training whistle hung around his neck. A man in a neat suit came to meet him. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Malcolm Reed, the headmaster. Tom speaks very highly of you." Jack swallowed hard. "I'm not who I used to be, Mr. Reed." The headmaster studied him for a moment. "Perhaps that's not a bad thing. We all change. What matters is who you choose to be today." In the school hall, 20 children aged 7 to 11 were waiting. They looked at Jack curiously. He spotted Emma among them, her eyes wide with surprise and delight when she saw him. "Children," said Mr. Reed, "this is Mr. Thompson. He's going to help with basketball club from now on." Jack blew his whistle gently. "Right then," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in years. "Let's start with the basics." News about Jack spread through Oakfield like wildfire. After just 3 days of coaching at the school, parents were talking about the tall man with the gentle voice who was teaching their children not just basketball skills, but also patience and teamwork. On the 4th morning, Jack walked to the school wearing a proper tracksuit that Tom had given him. For the first time in years, he walked with his head held high. A woman stopped him outside the bakery. "Mr. Thompson," she asked, smiling warmly. "I'm Ben's mum. He can't stop talking about your basketball sessions. He's never been interested in sports before, but now he's practicing at home every evening." Jack felt his cheeks grow warm. "Ben's doing really well. He's got good hands for passing." "Well, thank you. It means a lot to him, to all the children." This happened 3 more times before Jack reached the school. Each time, parents thanked him with genuine smiles. It felt strange but wonderful to be seen again, not as a fallen star or a homeless man, but as someone who was making a difference. At the newspaper office on High Street, Bill Watson, the editor of the Oakfield Gazette, was looking for a good story for the Friday edition. When his assistant mentioned that Jack "Big Shaq" Thompson was back in town and coaching children, Bill almost fell off his chair. "Big Shaq? Are you sure?" Bill had covered Jack's rise to fame years ago. Last I heard, he'd gone off the grid, completely. That afternoon, Bill visited the school during basketball practice. He watched from the doorway as Jack patiently showed a small boy how to dribble properly, getting down to the child's level and demonstrating the movement slowly. "You've got it, Peter. That's perfect." Jack's face lit up with genuine pride as the boy managed 3 dribbles in a row. Bill's story appeared in Thursday's paper with the headline, "Local Legend Returns, Big Shaq Finds New Purpose." The article told how Jack Thompson, once Oakfield's most famous athlete, was now volunteering at the primary school, bringing joy to a new generation. The newspaper reached more people than Jack could have imagined. By Thursday afternoon, his old teammate Mike Barnes had called the school asking for Jack's number. That same day, 3 other former teammates reached out. They had all wondered what had happened to him, but no one had known how to help or even where to find him. Meanwhile, at school, Emma was bursting with pride. "That's my friend," she told everyone who would listen. "I met Mr. Jack first. He sits on the park bench sometimes." During reading time, Mrs. Wilson noticed Emma couldn't concentrate. Her eyes kept drifting to the window where Jack was setting up cones in the playground for the afternoon session. "Emma, could you help me for a moment?" Mrs. Wilson asked, leading the girl to the back of the classroom. From her desk drawer, she pulled out a yellow folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, faded but well preserved. "Do you know who your friend Mr. Jack really is?" Mrs. Wilson asked gently. Emma shook her head. Mrs. Wilson showed her the clippings one by one. There was Jack in a bright blue uniform, jumping higher than seemed possible to catch a ball. There he was holding a golden trophy, a huge smile on his face. Another showed him visiting a children's hospital, surrounded by excited patients. Jack Thompson was a basketball star, Mrs. Wilson explained. Everyone in town called him Big Shaq because he was so tall and so good at the game. He played for England in big competitions. Children waited for hours just to get his autograph. Emma's eyes grew wide. But why was he sitting alone on a bench? Why didn't he have any food? Mrs. Wilson's face grew sad. Sometimes life can be very hard, even for famous people. Jack had a bad injury and couldn't play anymore. It made him very sad for a long time. She put her hand gently on Emma's shoulder. "So you helped someone very special, Emma. Sometimes people just need to be reminded they matter." Emma looked at the photos again. The smiling man in the bright uniform didn't look much like her friend Jack, but his eyes were the same, kind eyes. That evening, Jack was tidying up the small room he rented. The landlord had been surprised when Jack paid his overdue rent that morning. Jack had used the money from his first coaching payment. Mr. Reed had insisted on paying him, even though Jack had offered to volunteer. The phone Tom had lent him rang suddenly. Jack hardly ever received calls. "Hello? Jack, is that really you?" The voice was instantly familiar. Coach Roberts, the man who had first spotted Jack's talent when he was just 15. "Coach? Yes, it's me. My God, it's good to hear your voice, son. I saw the article. Been trying to find you for years." They talked for nearly an hour. Coach Roberts was now running a national program teaching basketball to disadvantaged youth. By the end of the call, he had offered Jack a job traveling around the country, running training camps and sharing his experience. "We need someone who understands both the heights and the lows," Coach Roberts said. "Someone who can tell these kids that falling down isn't the end of the story." After hanging up, Jack sat on his bed, his mind spinning. A real job, a chance to use his skills again, a purpose. It was more than he had dared to hope for just a few days ago. Jack looked at his reflection in the small mirror. The tired, defeated look was fading from his eyes. He wasn't Big Shaq anymore, but maybe he could be something else, something new and worthwhile. Through it all, one thought kept returning. None of this would have happened without Emma, without her sandwich, without her smile, without her simple kindness that asked for nothing in return. A little girl had seen value in him when he couldn't see it himself. Tomorrow he would have to tell her he'd be leaving Oakfield soon for his new job. But he would make sure she knew what her kindness had meant, how it had saved him, how one small good deed had changed everything. The fifth morning broke with golden sunshine, a perfect autumn day. At Oakfield Primary School, there was an unusual buzz of excitement. Headmaster Reed had called a special assembly, but wouldn't tell anyone. Why? Parents were invited too, which only happened for important occasions. Emma sat with her class, wondering what was happening. Mum had taken the morning off from the bakery to attend. She looked just as puzzled as everyone else. The hall fell silent as Headmaster Reed walked onto the stage. Behind him came Jack, looking smart in a proper shirt and trousers. But the biggest surprise was the group of tall men who followed. They wore matching blue jackets with Oakfield Falcons written on them, the professional basketball team Jack had once played for. "Children, parents, and teachers," the headmaster began. "Today I have the honor of properly introducing someone who has been helping us this week. Some of you may know him as Mr. Jack, our new basketball coach, but many years ago everyone in this town knew him by another name." The headmaster turned to Jack with a smile. "This is Jack Big Shaq Thompson, once the greatest basketball player this town, perhaps this country, has ever seen." A murmur of surprise spread through the hall. Some of the parents gasped. One dad even stood up, looking shocked. Jack stepped forward, looking nervous but determined. He cleared his throat. "Thank you, Mr. Reed. It feels strange to be standing here. For a long time I thought the man you just described was gone forever." Jack's voice was quiet but strong, enough for everyone to hear. 10 years ago I was at the top of my game. Then I had an accident that ended my career. I lost everything. My job, my home, my marriage. Most of all, I lost hope. The hall was completely silent now. Even the youngest children seemed to understand that something important was being shared. Last Monday I was sitting on a park bench, hungry and alone. I had hit rock bottom. I didn't think anyone cared if I existed anymore. Jack's eyes searched the crowd until he found Emma. He gave her a small smile. Then a little girl came up to me and offered me her sandwich, just like that. No questions asked, no judgment, just pure kindness. Emma's classmates turned to look at her. Her cheeks went red. "Sometimes the smallest hands can lift the heaviest weights from our hearts," Jack continued, his voice becoming thick with emotion. That simple sandwich reminded me that I was still a person worth caring about. It gave me the courage to try again, to remember who I was beyond basketball. Jack gestured to the men behind him. "These are my old teammates. When they heard I was back, they reached out to help. Together, we've created something special that I want to announce today." One of the basketball players stepped forward with a large poster. He unrolled it to reveal a colorful sign that read, "Emma's Sandwich Fund," with a picture of a sandwich and a basketball. "Emma's Sandwich Fund will do two important things," Jack explained. "First, It will make sure that no child in our community ever goes hungry. We'll provide free lunches to any child who needs one. Second, we'll bring basketball programs to schools that can't afford sports equipment or coaches. Parents began to clap. Teachers wiped away tears. The children looked excited, especially when they heard about the basketball equipment. "Emma," Jack called softly, "would you please come up here?" Emma looked at her mum, who nodded with tears in her eyes. Slowly, Emma walked to the stage. Her legs felt wobbly. Jack knelt down so he was at eye level with her. The microphone caught his words. "Emma, what you did changed my life. You saw me when nobody else did. You gave me more than food. That day, you gave me back my purpose." He held out his hand. "Would you help me cut the ribbon to officially start our charity?" A blue ribbon had been stretched across the stage. Emma nodded, her eyes wide with wonder. One of the basketball players handed her a pair of scissors. 1, 2, 3. Everyone counted together. Emma cut the ribbon as the whole school cheered. Cameras flashed as the local newspaper took pictures. Later, as parents and children enjoyed cake and juice in the school hall, Jack told Emma about his new job traveling around the country to teach basketball. "Will you come back to visit?" Emma asked. "Every month," Jack promised. "The charity will be based here in Oakfield, and it all started because you shared your lunch." Emma's mum joined them, her eyes still wet with happy tears. "Thank you," she said to Jack, "for showing my daughter that her kindness matters." "She showed me the same thing," Jack replied simply. In the years that followed, Emma's sandwich fund grew bigger than anyone could have imagined. Hundreds of children received free lunches. Dozens of schools got new basketball courts. Jack became known not as a fallen star, but as the man who turned his life around to help others. And every month, without fail, Jack returned to Oakfield to have lunch with Emma on the same park bench where they first met. A simple reminder that sometimes the smallest kindness can change everything.